right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Giallo alongside Anthony Pine of RTÉ Sport Online, and this week we're joined by Gary Rogers and Keith Tracy. Plenty to talk about between Shamrock Rovers definitely guaranteeing themselves group stage football in the Europa Conference League and also making as far as the Europa League playoff round, and then also Pats and Sligo who have exited the Conference League. Plus there's plenty going on across the water, including Manchester United's continued struggles, and this time it was against Brentford. But we'll be starting with the League of Ireland clubs in Europe, and it'll be Shamrock Rovers. We've got the two legs against Ferencvaros in the Europa League playoff round. First leg on Thursday, which is going to be live on RT2 and the RT Player, 5:30 kickoff, and we'll bring you the second leg next week as well. And Anthony, obviously, look, with Pats and Sligo going out, it's disappointing for both of those clubs, but unlike last season, it's there is something to celebrate, at least from League of Ireland point of view, with at least one club making into a group stage.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think the lessons that can be learned from Shamrock Rovers as well is something that the likes of Pats can really take heed of. Looking at Pats the other night, sometimes you just need to go close a couple of times to pick up that experience. Like, obviously they have to make sure they get back into Europe next season now. That's the obvious priority for St. Pat's, and that's why yesterday was a big 3 points for them, of course. But when you look at Rovers, like how they closed out the second leg to ensure now that they've got a minimum of the Europa Conference League group stages, that's just a bit of nous and experience and how they control that game, and going away to fairly difficult environment. There was a bit of needle in the game in the run up to it with the sort of flight plans and all the rest of it. But I actually thought Rovers were very like in the end they were very comfortable over two legs, and now they've got a swing at making it to the Europa League group stages, but they've got a brilliant safety net of the Europa Conference League, and that's brilliant for them. That's kind of been coming with Shamrock Rovers. It's been kind of coming from the last couple of years. I think Stephen Bradley would admit that they've been disappointed with how they fared in Europe. They probably would have expected a little bit more themselves, but this would have been within their targets at the start of the season, 100%. They would have known that it's within them. And then when you consider as well that just looking at their bench the other night, Raf, Graham Burke comes on. Jack Byrne is still to come back into the team. Like, I know they've lost a little bit of quality from that side, but they've still got tons of quality, and it'd be really exciting to see how they fare now, whether it's the Europa Conference League or the Europa League. It's great. And as I said, at this point, as it was for St. Pat's, if they can get back there next season, they'll have learned a huge amount from that game against CSKA, because I thought they were very unfortunate. Ultimately, when you get to the sharp end of these knockout games, as the lads will tell you, like it's just, you have to take your chances when they come. You have to take your chances when they come. And giving up the first goal the other night, like a free header in the box, like that type of thing, and that absolutely kills you. Like, I wasn't usually impressed by CSKA or anything. It wasn't like they came and there was patches where they were playing past out of the park or anything like that at all. Like, it was just those little moments that can kill you at the sharp end of it. And look, they'll all learn a lot from Tim Clancy included, young manager. But overall, it has been a positive European campaign for the yellow white clubs, I think, overall this summer.
Yeah, we look at the stats and how it compares to last season a little bit later on. But let's start with Shamrock Rovers, Gary. I mean, as they had won the first leg against Shkupi here at home 3-1, and then went to North Macedonia. It was always going to be a bit tricky, and won 2-1 with second half goals from Rory Gaffney and Idemo Amaku before Sunday Adechunji got a consolation for Shkupi. But in terms of how Rovers managed that second leg, and even when you look at the first half where there were no goals scored, they seemed to create the best chances on the break, and it all seemed to kind of stem from Rory Gaffney as well.
Yeah, I looked at there's lots of interesting things when it comes to Shamrock Rovers and how they've done. Yeah, you have to, the foundation for that, I suppose, comfort that they had in the second leg was that third goal in Tala. Like, Gary O'Neill's late strike in the 96th minute, that set it up, and that gives the team confidence going to the away leg that they have that little bit of cushion. You have to remember that Shamrock Rovers over the last couple of European ties have suffered at the hands of a late goal where, that third goal went in against Lou de Gret, and I think of last year was the same thing with the third goal, fourth goal killed them in the tie. So that's really, give them the foundation to go on and put in a really comfortable second leg performance away from home. Looked very good in the game, controlled it well, but there's huge experience in that squad. You look through the players like the Ronan Finn, and I know Sean Gannon, Sean Hoare, all guys that have massive experience in Europe and massive know-how and have been in group stages. I think this will be Ronan Finn's fourth trip to group stages, third and fourth for Sean Gannon. So, they're a very, very experienced squad, and they've a great opportunity now to go and have a free shot at getting into the Europa League. Obviously, worst case scenario, they'll drop down into the Conference League. So, Shamrock Rovers and the League of Ireland in general will be really happy that where they are in the position they're in. And obviously, look, the Conference League has made it a little bit easier to attain group stages, but that aside, it's been a really good season for the clubs. And you look at Sligo's results and Pat's results. Pat can find itself very unlucky not to get themselves a little bit further in the competition as well.
Yeah, and Keith, Rory Gaffney, brilliant in the first half, not so much in the goal scoring stakes. Obviously that came in the second half, but just the positions he was picking up and the channels he sort of runs in, it kept Shkupi guessing.
Yeah, it did, and I have written down in my notes here that Shamrock Rovers only had 38% of the ball away to Shkupi, so not something that they would have been used to at all, Shamrock Rovers, but they dealt with it really well. And the way they went away to Shkupi, it was a real blueprint on how to play away from home. Gaffney, when he got the ball, not really threatening in terms of scoring goals, but when he got the ball, he kept the ball, he won fouls, he chased lost causes, and that's what you need. And I think they went over there and just gave a really professional performance. I think the job was done in the first leg, but they had to finish it off in the second leg. We weren't sure how good Shkupi were going to be at home, but I think Rovers went there and over the two legs, like Anthony says, they were fairly comfortable, and that's really bodes really well for the League of Ireland clubs. And not by any stretch of the imagination could St. Pat's have got through as well. So we could have had two League of Ireland clubs through as well. And Sligo, I know they didn't turn up in the first leg against Viking, but they won the second leg 1-0, and it could have been 2-0 also. They missed a penalty. So, the League of Ireland comes out with a lot of credit this time round, and obviously Shamrock Rovers are still flying the flag for us.
Yeah, and something Graham Gartland has often mentioned during the European run has been how Dylan Watts is very suited to European football, Anthony. And again, he was instrumental, especially when we look at maybe, obviously, a lot of the focus is often on Jack Byrne, but Watts has been excellent over the last year or so.
Yeah, no, as Keith makes the point there, that the trio, like that sort of triumvirate of Gaffney, Green, Watts, Richie Towell as well. Like they worked so hard, like Rovers didn't have so much of the ball, but when they got it, they looked a threat, they looked potent, and you've got that bit of cleverness as well with Watts, just that blend of energy and a little bit of smartness, a little bit of news, knowing when to sort of go for it and try and go for the jugular, and then also just take the sting out of the game, draw a foul, let Gaffney work the channels. Now this is like, as Gary says, like the experience that bank of experience they have within the squad, and I think within Stephen Bradley himself, he is still a young manager. He's been around for a few years now, but he is still a young manager. And once you get to that sort of level, into these like the later rounds of the qualifiers, and then once they get into the group stages, like it just the bar goes up and up and up, and you learn harsh lessons. You learn really harsh lessons. So. I agree exactly what Keith said there. I just thought I never really felt like they were on the ropes or anything or in danger throughout the game. They had some very good individual performances, but collectively I thought Shamrock Rovers were very good, and they fully deserved it now. And we can all look forward to seeing how they get on in the next round and in that playoff, and beyond that then the group stages of whatever competition they end up in.
Yeah, before we talk about Ferencvaros and the challenge that comes up in the Europa League playoff round now, first leg on Thursday, it's said on RT2 and RT Player. Just something Anthony said there about sort of the young managers, and we'll talk about Pats and Sligo a little bit later on, but obviously John Russell, young manager at Sligo. You've also got Tim Clancy, young manager at Pats, and then as Anthony said there, Stephen Bradley, young manager at Shamrock Rovers. And Keith, you look at it there, and it's a massive achievement when you consider maybe they're they are relatively experienced, but compared to maybe some of the kind of older heads within the management and coaching game, it's kind of remarkable what they've been able to do straight away.
Yeah, they're doing really well. I know Stephen Bradley just doing really well, and so is Tim Clancy. Even I spoke to Johnny Russell yesterday. I was at the Sligo game and I was picking his brains about it, and he held his hands up and he said, we didn't turn up for the first leg, but we rectified it in the second leg. And it wasn't so much tactical changes, it was just like they did against Motherwell. I think they just wanted it that bit more when they got to the showgrounds. The most important thing for me is, other than the Motherwell game where there was real flashes of brilliance and good play, we're doing it the right way. We're playing football. All three teams are going out to play football. Even Pats against CSKA, where you could have been forgiven for maybe going a little bit longer, a little bit more direct at times. We all try to play football, so it all bodes well. And when you bring these young managers in, they're all forward thinking. Nobody now is stuck in the 4-4-2 era of kick it long, play second balls. I think we've all evolved past that, and it's linked in with Stephen Kenny into the national team as well, and the league is thriving from it. And with Brexit now happening as well, and not being able to go across the water so young, I think it will breathe new life into the league, because we'll get to hold on to players that maybe we might necessarily not have kept. So it's all boding well, and we're playing the right way. We're playing attractive football, and the pitches are getting better, which wasn't always a given in the league either. So they are getting conducive to good football. So it's all on the up, and I'm just glad that the one thing that was niggling with me was sometimes we have rivalry within the league, but when Sligo got beat 5-1, you could hear people say, we knew that was coming, this and that, and people were very quick to jump on the bandwagon. But I was so happy that they went and got the 1-0 win, and like you said, it could have been a lot more, and we were doing ourselves proud. And next season again, Pats and Sligo had a little taste of it. Now Rovers are still flying the flag, but you'd expect Pats to be more hungry next season, having beaten Sligo yesterday. They're in the hot seats for the race for fourth. So I think it bodes well for everybody. I think Pats and Sligo will be really, really hungry. Rovers will obviously be really enjoying it, and you think Dundalk will be strong again this season, so they'll be in European football as well. So I'm looking forward to the run-in for the chase to fourth. And like I said, I think the young managers are doing really, really well in the league.
Yeah, so Shamrock Rovers still flying the flag, and Thursday, first leg, Europa League playoff round, Ferencvaros. So these are the Hungarian record champions. They've won their league the last 4 times in a row, and 33 overall. So pretty big club historically. And they did play in the Champions League group stages 2 years ago, and then were in the Europa League group stages last season. And the way they ended up in the Europa League was losing 4-2 to Karabag of Azerbaijan on aggregate in the Champions League third round. So it's a big challenge for Shamrock Rovers, and Ferencvaros are going to be the favourites, Gary. So do they have, I would imagine the way Stephen Bradley looks at it, and judging from the way he talks about it, they're not going to look at it as a free hit, but it sort of is in a way, given that they do have the guarantee of a Conference League group stage to come.
Yeah, look, it absolutely is a free hit, no matter what way you dress it up. I think Ferencvaros, obviously a really good side. Karabag, a team that I would have played against, obviously beating them over the 2 legs and have continued their progress. So look, it's a difficult tie. There's no doubt about it. But at this stage of the competition, you're not going to get probably anybody more attractive, to beat. And I think Shamrock Rovers as well, within their capabilities, over 2 legs, with the pressure off, with group stages in the bag, to go out there and perform. And like I've mentioned earlier, the players that they have, in their ranks, like the Graham Buck and Jack Byrne, who we get to see the best of Jack because of injury this year, but the quality that they have throughout the squad. And I think players always raise their game. League of Ireland players especially raise their game when it comes to European football, and I think it's a great barometer for the league and for the League of Ireland. And we all want to see our clubs, in group stages, because it shines a good light on our league. As we know, it's struggled for years to get the kind of limelight that and the credibility that it deserves, because there's lots of good players in our league, lots of really talented young players coming through. And I think for Shamrock Rovers to go and beat Ferencvaros over two legs, it'd be a really good achievement. I think there is obviously better standard of opposition, but when it comes to this end of it, you need to beat a really good side to get into Europa League group stages. And I think this is a tie that Stephen Bradley and Shamrock Rovers will look at as a really good opportunity for them. And like I said, with the pressure off of having group stages in the bag, I think they can really go out there and let loose. It's not about taking the shackles off and being you still have to be defensively solid, and you have to take your opportunities, because European football comes down to that. You look at Pat the other day, put in a really good performance. We're probably very unlucky with the handball and the penalty, but defensively you've got to be sound. But equally so, when it comes to up front and getting the opportunities, you've got to take your chances. That's what it's all about. Like the group stages that we would have got through, we were up against it. We were always defensively solid. But we had Dave McMillan, who was on fire, and he would have got 1 or 2 chances, and the difference was that Dave took them chances. And I think if Shamrock Rovers can be, I suppose, clinical at that end of the pitch, they've every chance of getting through to Europa League.
Yeah, so the first leg is in Budapest on Thursday, 5:30 kickoff, and it's going to be live on RT2 and the RT Player. And we'll also bring you the second leg the following week. We've touched on Pats, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail. Obviously, they lost at home 2-0, or well, not at home, well, Tallaght Stadium. I mean, obviously, it's the nominal home leg, but at Tallaght Stadium, 2-0 to CSKA Sofia. So an early goal from Maurizio Garces, and then late on Ivan Turtsov, and there was some controversy about that. And then later on, Adam O'Reilly and Bradley Denoyer both seeing red. But Anthony, just on this game first, in the general sense, I think you touched on it at the beginning, but it was just something Conan Byrne said on the commentary, which was on the RT News channel last week, and that CSK were pretty much there for the taking, and probably over the two legs. They were a bit better in the second leg, but Pats, in reality, when you actually look at the balance of play and the chances, a couple of chances here and there, and you're probably talking about Pats going through.
Oh, 100%. I think Anto Breslin had a chance not too long before the penalty, which it did look like a harsh penalty, and the replays looked like the CSK player handled it first. But maybe just, I don't know, look, it's hard to kind of quantify or put your finger on these kind of things. A little bit of belief, maybe, just getting that mix of being like really up for it and getting the absolute most out of yourself, but then also having a bit of composure when the game is in the mix. It's difficult. It's very difficult. But I think Pats, when they look back on that, they'll probably think, yeah, they were there for the taking. They must be thinking that, because that name, CSKA Sofia, it's such a big European name. You go in, like, you're amping yourself up. Maybe initially Pats fans were thinking, let's just go over there and not, keep ourselves in the tie. That's what they were probably realistically thinking. Then to go over there and win. And now it's like, oh my God, there's actually a chance here. So maybe there was just a little bit. They were almost like overly hyping CSK in their own heads. I don't know. Like, it's, as I said, it's hard to quantify it. As two games of football, you look back at it and say, I think Pats were the better team. I actually think they were the better team over two legs. It's not like there was no part of that tie where they were chasing shadows for like 10 or 15 minutes. CSK were better in the second leg, probably underestimated Pats in the first leg. But in the end, they got a fortunate penalty decision to win the tie. Once it goes to extra time, I thought it was going to penalties. Like, looking at the game, I thought it was going to fizzle out. They'll cancel each other out, and it was going to go to penalties. It kind of had that look about it. And in saying that, in that second half, it was St. Pat's who had the better chances. So look, sometimes it just goes like that for you. Like, it's, as I said, the big thing for us is it's a big learning curve. Get back into Europe next season now. That's the thing for them. Get back in. I'm sure they're all, in the few days after that game, they're all just saying it amongst themselves, look, lick our wounds. Like, we want to get back to that stage and have another crack at it, because, we're not that far off. They weren't that far off.
Yeah, and Keith, just on, obviously, as Anthony said there, Pats had chances, like Anto Breslin's one from close range, I think, which he kind of scuffed, I think, sort of at the goalkeeper. But the lesson, maybe, and they can take it almost from Shamrock Rovers and Shkupi, is you don't want to be conceding an early enough goal in an easy fashion, as happened with the set piece.
Yeah, look, when a team like CSK come over, you're to a large degree, you're going to defend well, you're going to get compact. But if somebody puts one in the top corner from 30 yards out, you hold your hands up and say that's excellent play, world class stuff. But to be undone from a set piece it's something that will really grate on Tim. I know that for a fact, because you expect when these big clubs come, you're going to defend properly, and they didn't defend properly. Adam O'Reilly had a big chance as well. It was a decent save by the goalkeeper, but there was just little moments. And I was at the game, and I think it was Adam O'Reilly again. It was only 2 minutes into the game, and he got fouled. It was quite a heavy tackle, but he jumped straight back up, and Pats took the foul, played the ball straight away. And I said to my wife at the time, I said he should have stayed down for about 2 or 3 minutes there. And the game was only kicked off. Do you know what I mean? So I just wanted him, because as soon as CSKA get back into it, they're going to start taking their time over things, taking their time over goal kicks. You've seen how, the dark arts, as we call it, taking their time over things. I think Pats were just a little bit green, a little bit wet behind the ears still. And as Gary said, I think game management is such a big thing in Europe. Pats were winning 1-0. They should have really, really frustrated them into, overreaching and then try and hit them on the counter-attack. But like I said, it could have been so different. And they relied on a really, really dodgy penalty decision. And I don't want to be disrespectful to St. Pat's and say it was a moral win, because I think we've moved past that. I think as a league, and definitely St. Pat's as a club, we've moved past moral victories. They lost the game. They didn't deserve to lose the game. You know, they can move on with their heads held high, but now the next thing is just, I would imagine Tim is just reiterating to the lads, we need European football next year. That's what we want. We want to be back in the hat, and we want more nights like this.
Yeah, you mentioned the penalty decision, but even before that, in the lead up to it, obviously Brockbank, it's the handball, I guess by the letter of the law, they tend to get given. But there was that free kick down the touchline where Atakanyi is trying to flick the ball past the CSKA defender, and then a free kick is given for that. It looked bizarre.
There was a lot of bizarre decisions on the night. I don't know, you know, there were so many weird decisions from the referee, and I don't want to come on here and hammer the referee because they do have hard jobs. I know there's no VAR as well in Tallaght, so you know, it was just there was probably 10 decisions that really baffled me. Like I ended up looking around, people around me, so what was that for? And I remember there was one foul where I think everybody in the ground thought it was a Pat's foul. CSKA dropped in to defend it, and the referee pointed the other way. There was just so many baffling decisions, but I thought it was great to watch. You know, I ended up getting the Lewis to the game. I got off the Lewis in the square Tallaght, and you could feel the atmosphere from Tallaght. The stadium was bouncing already, and this was in around 7 o'clock. This was nearly 45 minutes before kickoff, so the atmosphere was brilliant. The lads were really up for it. I just think game management was the one thing they really missed out on, because the performance was there, maybe not clinical enough in front of goal, but you know, all the legs in the world, all the want, all the will, but just a little bit green behind the ears in terms of game management.
Yeah, and as it turned out, it's Joseph Anang's last appearance for Pat, so he's going back to West Ham, and I think presumably joining Derby County as well. Danny Rogers signed from Oldham, and he's coming in. He's coming in now, and he made his debut against Sligo at the weekend. We'll talk about that game a little bit later on. But Tim Clancy afterwards wasn't too happy in regards to how the end of Anang's time at Pats came along, Gary. So just to read out his quote, he's got a big future ahead of him, but we're really disappointed in the way the end of Joe's loan came about. There was a recall in June which wasn't used, and subsequently we let Josh Keeley go to Tottenham. Joe sort of pushed us into a corner where we had to let him go. He wouldn't travel to Bulgaria unless we agreed to let him go. I think he's just been badly advised. It's a massive move for him, and we wish him all the best. So what do you make of that situation, Gary? Because obviously we've spoken about him. I think you've mentioned that he's one that he made an early error in the President's Cup final, and after that showed some of his quality. And then, as we see now, you know, it's all happened all of a sudden that he's departing, and probably at a bad time for the club as well.
Yeah, look, it's disappointing, obviously for St. Pat's, like Tim has said there in your quotes, where they've let Josh Keeley go, thinking that they've had Joseph until the end of the season, and then, you know, they forced a move away from the club. Like, obviously the club would have planned to have him around the place for the rest of the season, and look, it is disappointing when you hear that, you know, players refusing to play, or presumably, you know, refusing to play in a European tie unless he was let go. So it's a strange situation. Obviously, he's gone on loan now to Derby County, which, you know, I think he'll have gained massively from playing for St. Pat's Premier Division football here and European football. Like, you know, he's probably going to be second or third choice possibly at Derby County. We don't know, you know, the ins and outs of that, whether he'll start or not. But I think, you know, for a goalkeeper at that age, it's massively important to be playing football. And, you know, you look at the likes of, you know, Gavin Pazzoon and Mark Travers, and they've kicked on because they've been playing football early doors in their careers. Like, Gavin obviously played a little bit in the League of Ireland before he left, but you know, for a goalkeeper to progress and to get to the highest level, you know, the earlier they can get playing men's football, the better. And I think, you know, he's possibly turned down that opportunity to continue his progress at St. Pat's, and obviously Tim is frustrated at the circumstances around it, which is hugely disappointing, obviously, for St. Pat's and for him. Joseph has done really well, and particularly in that away leg against CSKA Sofia. So it's disappointing the circumstances, but like his replacement, Danny Rogers, obviously very experienced goalkeeper, 28, come in, has a lot of games in Scotland, is playing with Lena Ray Martin O'Neill's squad in 2016 and under 21 international. So he's gone and got an experienced keeper, and he's also got David Olomusu there as backup. But I'm sure he wouldn't like to have been pressured into the situation where he's had to go and find a replacement at the drop of a hat. And all credit to Tim and his team and the staff, you know, to go and get a replacement of that ilk. And he did really well in the game against Sligo, made a couple of very important saves. You know, Keith was in commentary for it. So, yeah, look, it's a strange situation where they're forcing that loan move, you know, to go back and then to go to a club where you're possibly not going to play.
Yeah, so yeah, as you said, Danny Rogers making his Pats debut against Sligo Rovers. We'll talk about that game very shortly before we get on to the rest of the Premier Division games. But just Sligo, anyway, themselves finished on a relatively high note in the Europa Conference League. Obviously, they'd lost the away leg to Viking in Norway 5-1, and then at the showgrounds 1-0 Will Fitzgerald's goal just before half time. So Keith, it's again, they'll be disappointed, maybe as you said, with the way they folded in the first leg. But at least there is a sort of positive there, which also helps with our coefficient, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in terms of the league's ranking in UEFA. But it's from John Russell's point of view, it's a nice way. It's a nice way to end.
Yeah, it's a good way to finish the second leg off with a win. But the first leg, it's probably only the first half. Like I said, I was speaking to Johnny on the side of the pitch yesterday, and he was reiterating that it was more or less the first 45 minutes that Sligo didn't turn up. And, anybody can not turn up for 45 minutes. He said if there was maybe 4 or 5 of them that were having a real off day. And all you can ask, that can happen to any team at any time. It just so happened that it struck at that. And the 5-1 scoreline, it's out of doubt. The fixture's gone. But all that Johnny can do after that is tell the lads, listen, take it as a one-off fixture. We win this leg. We win this game of football. We forget about the first one. And they did that. So they did get some confidence back from that. I'm sure they did. And like I said, being beaten 5-1 by a decent Viking team, you maybe are thinking, are we out of our depth? Have we got here too early? But being able to rectify it with a decent 1-0 win, a well-deserved 1-0 win, could have been 2-0, like I say. So it wasn't a smash bang wallop in the second leg. They didn't nick it by any stretch of the imagination. It was a good solid performance by Sligo. So yeah, I think look, it was a bad 45 minutes, a bad 90 minutes in the first leg, but they did the only thing they could do, and they bounced back. They were never going to win the tie after the first leg, so all they could do was win the second leg, and they did that. So fair play to them, but straight back to another loss against Pats. But I'm sure we'll touch on that.
Yeah, we'll touch on it now actually, because the equation is fairly simple for them. Obviously, no European involvement from here on in, and also both got knocked out of the cup at the first attempt. So, as you said, you were at the game yesterday, and the equation is fairly simple. I mean, both are trying to get into that sort of top 4 to give themselves a chance of being in Europe next season. But as you said, Pats won 1-0, so they have the momentum now. They're 4 points clear. They're on 39 points, and then Sligo 4 behind. So, what was the balance of the game like?
It was fairly 50-50, if I'm honest. Maybe Sligo had better chances in the game. I feel that Pats had, decent possession, probably dominated the ball more often than not. But with Max Mata up front, Sligo possessed a really good counter threat in the first half. In the second half, the goal happened in the first half, but it was a really, really poor mix-up between the goalkeeper and the centre-half. And Owen Doyle gets it on the halfway line, he turns and he plays a little slide-through ball through the centre-half, and the goalkeeper comes out, McNicholas. He can see the whole picture. The centre-half turns. Serge Atakoy, who we know is lightning quick, he's a little bit nervous. He loses sight of him, so the centre-half dangles out a leg. The goalkeeper comes anticipating he's going to clear the ball, but there's no communication between the two of them, and Serge just has an easy tap in. Danny Rogers played really, really well. It was his debut in the league. Played really, really well. Made a decent save in the first couple of minutes. Sligo had a good chance. Made 1 or 2 decent saves in the second half. Come out and commanded the box really well. So he made a really good debut. Nobody wanted to see the back of Joey Anang, considering how well he did. But I think they have a fitting replacement in Danny Rogers. There was a sending off in the 65th minute. Mark Doyle. He goes into a tackle like a 50-50 sort of. He jumps up, there's a shoulder to shoulder, then the ball bounces, and you see Patrick Kirk, the Sligo left back, coming. The ball bounces, and you could see there was going to be a collision. Patrick Kirk bends his head slightly down to head it. Mark Doyle brings his foot up. The studs make contact with the forehead. For me, it was a red card all day long. It was the right decision by the referee to send them off. I don't think there was any maliciousness in it, but he endangered the player's safety by lifting his studs 6 feet off the ground. Sligo pushed the 25 minutes. They pushed, they huffed and pushed. Lewis Banks had a header he should have done better with, put it just wide. But on the whole, Pats did defend well, didn't give up too many opportunities. Danny Rogers, when he was asked to do something, he did it very, very capably. Sligo will feel they should have got something out of the game. Pats will be happy, given the European exploits, and Sligo the same. They'd be happy just to get the win on the board and move on. It wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but they get it and move on. And I spoke to Johnny after the game. He was very, very disappointed to get nothing out of it. And on the balance, I think a draw would have been fair, but Pats would have been. It was very little in it. It was a defensive mistake that gave Pats the goal. So if anybody was going to score from open play, good play, it was going to be Sligo. But Pats Serge Attakoi, like he did against CSKA, chasing lost causes and reaps the rewards of it.
Yeah, and the rewards as well, Anthony, before we get to the other Premier Division games. So the League of Ireland, just in the UEFA League rankings, went up 2 places. So they're up to 36 now. And then, but actually, when you look at the stats and you compare, say, wins, draws, losses between the clubs in Europe last season and this season, it's actually largely the same. So this season, it's 9 wins, 3 draws, and 6 defeats. And that's including that Pats win on penalties against Mora being down as a draw. And then when you look at it, last season there were 10 wins, 3 draws, and 7 losses for the League of Ireland clubs, and obviously Bohs played a big part in that last season with 4 victories. So the overall sense of where the FAI wanted the league to be in terms of the UEFA rankings was top 30 by 2025, and they were 40 ahead of this new Euro season. So as we said, Anthony, like when you look at it, 36, it's on the right road, and as Keith I think said earlier, it sort of bodes well.
Yeah, it bodes well. Success breeds success, obviously, but it bodes well if like what's happening is built upon, and money and funds goes into infrastructure, and things are there's a bit of joined up thinking, which is, that's the proof being the pudding if we come back and we see where we are in a few years' time, because look, the clubs are doing their part. Some of the clubs are doing tremendous work. Think of a club like Sligo Rovers. It's such a community-based club. There's people who just invest their whole lives, and others around the country. But bigger picture, like I know it's different levels, but if you look at the Premier League, like what a good coefficient can do for you in terms of getting extra European places and getting in obviously extra money for the clubs, and that money going into infrastructure, improving grounds and things like that. Broadly speaking, Raf, I'd say there's 3 kind of strands of football fan in Ireland, broadly speaking, where you're hardcore League of Ireland fans, Premier League and Champions League fans who would have a casual interest in the League of Ireland, and then there is a strand of fans who probably couldn't name you 5 League of Ireland players. That is the reality. So these European games, although they're very important for the clubs in terms of finances and just for the supporters themselves and the communities and towns and cities or whatever, it's also a great chance to get new eyeballs on League of Ireland clubs. Now, it's an uncomfortable truth for a lot of people but that is just the reality. There are Irish football fans here that just don't tune into the league. So that's another reason why these games are so important, and why the likes of Shamrock Rovers, they really are carrying the flag for the league. And as I said, look, the proof being the pudding over the next few years, the clubs are doing their bit. We've had a good summer, but we hope to see a bit of joined up thinking in terms of how do we keep expanding the league, keep a positive glare on the League of Ireland, get more people in, more eyeballs on it. And with that, if you keep doing well, and if you keep doing well in Europe, if the clubs keep doing well in Europe and they keep generating funds, naturally it should keep moving in the right direction. But look, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, and there's still a long way to go in the league as well. Just the other results, obviously, we talked about Pats beating Sligo Rovers 1-0 with Serge Attakai's goal, but on Friday night, Dundalk won 1-0 at Bohemians, and they were actually down to 10 men as well for the final 38 minutes. Then Derry City and Shamrock Rovers drew 0-0. We'll talk about that one first. There was some comments from Stephen Bradley just about wanting to have that game moved, but the league decided against it, and he wasn't too happy, but we have audio there, so we'll be able to have a listen to that. And then Drogheda United beat Shelbourne 3-1, coming from a goal down after Jack Moylan giving Shells the lead, and then Ryan Brennan scored a couple of goals in that game. And then a big one, and we'll talk about this one, Keith, later on, because you keep turning up whenever UCD happened to bolster your prediction. UCD beating Finn Harps 2-1, and that was a great goal by Evan Caffrey as well to give them victory there. What it does to the table, Shamrock Rovers 4 points clear of Dundalk, and also have a game in hand, and then Derry City currently 3rd, and then, as we said, Pats and Sligo Rovers then coming up 4th and 5th. But just the Derry City Shamrock Rovers game first, Gary. Alan Manus, Stephen Bradley was singing his praises afterwards, and he had a massive game, sort of got them the point in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Alan has been terrific over the years for Shamrock Rovers before. Obviously, he's had 2 stints at the club and he's back now, and he's been a massive component of their success since he's come back. And look, he's produced the goods again with a penalty save against Derry City at the weekend, and obviously played well in the game aside from that. But Alan has been the rock, I suppose, of the foundation that Shamrock Rovers' success in recent years has been built on, and Stephen rightly so praises him. And like, it's one of those games that, you know, Stephen's not happy that he's had to go and play that, but that's what happens when you're successful in Europe, and you're going to have to just get on with these things. And like, there's no way that, I think if it was the other way around, that, you know, Shamrock Rovers would have moved the tie for Derry City. I just think that stuff doesn't happen when clubs are, when it's the top clubs. Maybe if it was UCD, they may have helped out a little bit, but when it's your rivals in terms of a title race, I don't see the fixtures being moved around. So look, it's part and parcel of being successful, and they're going to have to contend with that between now and the end of the season, because look, one way or another they're going to have group stages and extra fixtures to contend with, so they're going to have a lot of games, and that's why they've got such a big squad there. And it's a great opportunity for players, you know, to gain experience obviously in Europe, but and younger players to come and maybe play some more league games that they might not necessarily have got. So but like you said about Alan's been terrific, so he's going to be a big part, have a big part to play between now and the end of the season when it comes to Europe as well.
Yeah, let's listen to Stephen Bradley just on that issue with the fixture against Derry City and wanting it pushed back 24 hours or maybe 48 hours, and just his view on that.
There was a lot of noise obviously in the build up to the game about your attempts to get the match rescheduled. Was that a motivating factor for you coming into the game tonight?
I just thought it was really poor from the league, like horrendous from the league, to be honest with you. We're talking about promoting Irish football and wanting the teams to do well, and we have to understand it benefits everyone in the long run, and we didn't want it off. We just wanted to move 24 hours like is normal in every country in the world when you have 2 away European games, and for some reason the league seen it fit not to help us, and I think that's really, really poor from the league and the people making the decisions. And it needs to be looked at. It's not good enough.
And no qualms with Derry that they were within their rights to stick with the Friday night?
No, I understand Derry's point of view. They want to catch us on the hop. They want to force the game when we've had a game on Tuesday. But the rules are the rules, and the league need to step in and make a call there, and they've shown zero leadership there in my opinion.
Okay, so that is Stephen Bradley speaking to Eric White after the Derry City game, and obviously he was looking to get that game pushed back by 24 hours at the very least, just between the two, the Shkupi away leg and then also travelling to Budapest to play Ferencvaros this Thursday. So Keith, what's your take on those comments there? Obviously Stephen Bradley's speaking from a Shamrock Rovers point of view, but what's your view sort of from the league's point of view in regards to whether that game should have been pushed back or not?
I think the league should have stepped in and pushed it back, if I'm honest. And I'm by far not a Rovers fan, and I have an alliance with St. Pat's. So I understand Derry's point of view. I think we all do. If you're in that Derry dressing room, you think you might be able to catch Shamrock Rovers coming to Derry a little bit tired, sore legs. We could be able to beat them and turn them over. That's fair enough. The rest of us, the league, the people from the outside looking in, the neutral, are all thinking, surely this is going to be put back. The league have to show, I think Stephen Bradley's right, the league have to show a little bit of leadership and help the lads out. I know Derry want to play them, but we're all pushing in the same direction. We all want the league to get better. We all want the league to get more exposure. Shamrock Rovers getting a little rest, trying to help themselves in Europe. Like Gary has said, they're going to have a lot of games now with the group stages coming up, so there won't be that much time now to actually fiddle around with the fixtures. This was one of the chances that they had to fiddle around and give them a little bit of a break. They hadn't done it, and I have to say, look, I think Shamrock Rovers will be okay domestically. They'll win the league anyway. They have a strong enough squad, a big enough squad. But I do think it's poor from the league. I have to be honest. I think they should have stepped in and 24, 48 hours, whatever it is. But yeah, look, I understand Derry's point of view. I have no qualms with what they're saying. If I was in the Derry dressing room, I might have been saying the exact same thing. But for me, the league should have stepped in. That's really poor from the league.
Yeah, and let's listen to Derry City manager Rory Higgins, who was speaking after that game as well. His general sense was that they, based on the chances they created and the dominance they had in the second half, that it should have been all 3 points for them. So let's just listen to him.
It is what it is, and what's pleasing is that how far we've come, and we've disappointed. They've taken 4 points from 9 when it should have been minimum 7. Against Shamrock Rovers. And
we talked before the game about it could be 11 points if Shamrock Rovers win, it could be 5 if you got a victory. It's fallen in between with a draw, so does it still keep you in the title?
Well, they leave here the happiest, there's no doubt about that. You could see the reaction at full time. They leave here the happiest, and it's not, we just have to try and win the next game and try and go on a run, and because we're more than capable of it. You can see the talent we have now and the depth it should be an exciting end of the season.
Okay, so that is Rory Higgins, Derry City manager, speaking to Eric White. And Gary, just on obviously his view of the game, I think it's largely shared by most people. Obviously, Shamrock Rovers, and I think Stephen Bradley talked about it afterwards himself in the rest of his interview with Eric White, that he knew his side would tire in the second half. Obviously, Derry City dominating. But when you look at their head-to-heads, they played 3 times now, and Derry City won the first one. Shamrock Rovers won the second, and there's been a sort of a draw in between as well, or a draw now as well, where Derry on their head-to-head would probably look at it and think, as Rory Higgins said, that they probably have largely edged the head-to-heads, but the issue they've had is maybe the lack of consistency in some of the other games, and that's what they're going to have to try and learn now, if from next season onwards, try and push closer to Rovers.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's no doubt that Derry have put together a really, really good side, and Rory has got some excellent players there. And on the head-to-heads in the Shamrock Rovers games, they've played really well. But look, league titles are won over the whole season, and Derry have dropped far too many points against teams that you would expect league champions to be beaten. So, and that's the major difference. As a group, they've got to kind of come together and be a little bit more solid every week, because you can't afford to have 2 or 3 games where you've like 2 or 3 defeats on the spin and stuff like that. You've got to be like, that's for Shamrock Rovers. That's a really good result for them to go away, in the circumstances off the back of qualifying for group stages in Europe during the week, having to go away to Derry. Obviously they came out of the traps well, were probably better in the first half than they were in the second half. For them though, it's a point gained and job done, and they've kept Derry at bay. So look, for Shamrock Rovers, and that's a sign of champions. That's why they are where they are. And they're going to have loads of games between now and the end of the season with Europa League group stages or conference group stages, and they'll be able to manage that. And I think that probably will give them the edge over the season. But this is something that like Derry City will have to learn from, obviously, to go and capitalise and beat the teams you should be beating every week, because that's what champions do, regardless of the situation. They go out and win the games they should be winning every week, and the games against the top teams look after themselves. Obviously, you look at Shamrock Rovers will play Dundalk this weekend, really good game, the top 2. So that's another huge test for them. And it's a pity. Obviously, we speak about games being on TV and highlighting our league. Like, that would have been a terrific game on a Sunday evening to be on the TV as well. So we need more of that as well. To promote our league and our players, because I think we keep saying earlier on, and Anthony, about our players being largely unrecognisable to the wider public. Unfortunately, our League of Ireland players, that's the situation. They're playing professional sport at the highest level in group stages, but I think the average punter would struggle to name 4 or 5 League of Ireland players, top League of Ireland players, and unfortunately, that's I suppose a stain on maybe the governing body and the broadcasters, that our league is not highlighted and broadcast more. So, but look, for Shamrock Rovers and Derry City know what they have to do in order to catch them and be more competitive. I don't see them catching them this year, but next year going forward, Roy Higgins is putting a really good squad together, and they will be contenders like Dundalk will as well.
Yeah, and Dundalk winning 1-0 at Bohemians, as we mentioned earlier. And we're just going to listen to Stephen O'Donnell and also to the Bows manager, Keith Long, who are both speaking after that game to Siobhan Madigan.
I thought it deserved 3 points. I thought we were the better team. The first half deservedly went 1 up. And then I thought we came out second half and done really well, and could have and probably should have went 2 up. Then obviously we hit a little bit of adversity. And then the character they showed, Bows are going to have opportunities against 10 men. They have really good attacking players. They went close a couple of times, but thought we had really good chances with 10 men. But in regards to attitude and digging in and just showing a want to get 3 points and a want to play for the club, I couldn't be any happier with our lads.
Bring you back to the start of the game. You lived dangerously in the opening couple of minutes. They came out like a steam train, and then you lost Pat Hooban.
Yeah, I thought they were directed a couple of dangerous moments without creating any chances. I felt a couple of little breaks, but Pat obviously went off injury, reacted really well to that, and then as the game went on, I thought we owned the game, and we had by far the better chances and total control of the game. So, and the second half started that way, and then they done us on the counter a little bit with we got a man sent off, but then we showed the other side of us in regards rolling your sleeves up and let's work hard for each other and make sure we maintain this scoreline.
Keith, that's a game I'd say you feel you should have got something from.
I'm not sure. we didn't work the goalkeeper enough. Nathan Shepherd hasn't really had to pull off any saves of note. Certainly going down to 10 men, we should work the goalkeeper a lot more. We should stretch the opposition a lot more and create more openings. We probably created 2 openings in the second 40 minutes after it went down to 10 men. So unfortunately, like I said, we haven't worked the goalkeeper enough, and we probably got what we deserved from the game.
Okay, so that is Bohemians manager Keith Long, and before that, Dundalk head coach Stephen O'Donnell. So Gary, you were at this game, and on the balance of play, obviously the two managers have discussed it there. But when, as you said, Dundalk are playing Shamrock Rovers this Sunday coming, and it's just a crucial result in keeping them just within touching distance of Shamrock Rovers, and you never know what can happen then.
Yeah, look, Dundalk are doing their business really well. I think Stevie O'Donnell will be very happy with how the season has gone. I think European football, would have been the goal for them. I don't think realistically they would have thought they were challengers, but they are obviously making a really good fist of it. Like there's massive experience in that Dundalk squad, and you look at the likes of Hooban and Boylan, you've got Greg Slogger, who's been there for a while, Dara Leahy. Obviously they brought in Nathan Shepherd, who's done really well for them this year. Who's a massive upgrade on last year's goalkeeper. I think Dundalk, the game itself, obviously the benefit is from an error for the goal by Ty Ryan, but they were comfortable, and they have that kind of bit of know-how and that steel that you would expect from that team. And they lost Ogbene early in the game, and obviously the sending off with Andy Boyle, which was a sending off, to be fair, it changed the game a little bit for Dundalk. I thought they were very good in the first half with Sloggett and Lewis in the middle of the field doing really well. But Bradley is a handful out wide. He was very good in the game as well. So look, Dundalk, they had that know-how. You look at Bo's team, and there was only 2 of the team that started the cup final last year on the pitch, to start with. So like there is huge change over there in Bohemians. And obviously, look, they lost Kelly and Tierney. Ali Coop played obviously, but Liam Burton didn't start. So they were the 4 players last year that caused all the problems and that were so good in Europe. And Keats has obviously had a massive turnover in players, and you can see it. They were a bit fragmented and they didn't really get going, and it was a home game for them. So, but like Dundalk, were full value for the win, even going down to 10 men. It was a strange weekend where you had sending off. The Pats had sending off against Sligo, and UCD were the same. They had sending off and came from behind to win 2-1. So, but when the send off happened again in Dalymount, I kind of felt that that Dundalk would have a bit that bit of steel about them to be able to see the result out. And Nathan Shepherd made a really good save in the second half from Ophel Abbey, I think it was, and they've seen it out quite comfortably in the end.
Yeah, and we come to UCD now, Keith. So since your prediction, I think it was back in June, that you kind of felt that they'd have the edge on Finn Harps in terms of getting to the relegation playoff spot and avoiding the automatic drop. It's kind of ebbed and flowed between them. Finn Harps were coming in with the points advantage, but then UCD winning 2-1. Evan Caffrey's goal obviously fitting to decide a game like this. It was brilliant, but in the wider context, it's a huge goal, and sort of what you've said before about your sense that UCD just have that little bit extra. It's put them in a really good position now.
Yeah, well, it's just reinforced me thoughts of. I seen them play against Pats. I'd done the co-commentary on it, and although they lost the game against Pats, there was periods in it where you thought UCD are not a bad team here. Now, nothing really came of the stuff they were doing, but I was seeing patches and patterns of play where I thought, this is not bad. If this clicks against some of the lower teams, they'll be okay. And I watched a little bit of the game on Friday night, and it was a real battle. I think there was 9 yellow cards, 1 red card in the game. It was a real battle. So the football side of it from UCD that I've seen, I've been happy enough with. And obviously they went down to 10 men in that game, still came back and won the game, which is huge given they were against Finn Harps, and it's massive game to win. So I think it's excellent. There's going to be a real race between UCD and Finn Harps for who gets the automatic relegation and the playoff. And I think we'll have a real race for 4th place as well. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in the league until the end.
Yeah, and Anthony, just as well, I think Drogheda United with the 3-1 win over Shelbourne, and that what it does in the table, obviously it pushes them again, further clear of that the battle of the two at the bottom, but it puts them right on the tail of Shelbourne and Bohs now. And then from a Shelbourne point of view as well, there had been talk about them having an ambition of maybe pushing closer to the European battle, whether they missed out on or not. So, but on that side of it, it looks like the battle below the European places, it's going to be really close there between Shells, Bohs and Drogheda.
Yeah, and I think Shells and Drogheda, when the dust settles, they'll both be very happy with where they are at this point in the season. Anything for Drogheda, like I thought Drogheda would have a real scrap on their hands this season, to be honest. Like with the drain of talent, the players that they lost in the off season, the likes of Joe Redmond and James Brown and Killian Phillips, like they lost some really good players, and Tim Clancy, of course, went to Pats. But they realistically they're safe. They're safe with plenty to spare. They've got a really good cup tie against Shamrock Rovers coming up down in Drogheda. You never know. They've shown they put it up to Shamrock Rovers already this season, so they might even have a decent. If they get over Rovers, you'd fancy them to have a pretty good cup run. They've got some good experienced players. The likes of Ryan Brennan was very good against Shells the other night. Deegan and Lazza and a few other good young players coming through. So they've done that's been a great job for Doherty, just to keep them on an even keel there with the way things went in the winter for them. And Shelbourne, look, they are ambitious, but first season up, just stay in the division. Just stay in the division and build from there. And those two are fine. They're well clear now of Finn Harps and UCT. It's between them two who's going to go bottom, and then the other will obviously go into the playoffs. So, yeah, look, they'll be happy. This is bonus territory, I think, for Drogheda, and certainly Drogheda, like to be in a scrap for mid-table like that. Europe is not attainable, and as long as they're not in a relegation scrap, they're going to be perfectly happy. And I think really, if they're being honest with themselves, Shelbourne are probably similar. I know they are ambitious long term, but look, as I said, first season up, just stay in the division, consolidate, and they can go from there.
Yeah, and in the first division, both of the top two lost, but the first result anyway on the Friday night, Wexford drawing 2-2 with Cove Ramblers, and then Galway, who were second, losing 2-1 at Waterford, and then Cork City, the division leaders, losing 2-0 at home to Treaty United, who themselves are trying to consolidate their place in the playoff. They're currently fifth, and then Bray Wanderers losing 3-0 to fourth place Longford. That's 3 wins in a row now for Longford after losing the Midlands derby to Athlone about 3 weeks ago. Now, Gary, on this, obviously Cork City losing kind of came, especially at home, came out of nowhere given their form this season. But the frustration from a Galway United point of view, of course, is that they haven't been able to, to make the most of that and at least try and close the gap at the top, even though Cork City still have a game in hand, which they're going to be playing against Waterford tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it will be massively disappointing for Galway. Obviously, look, Waterford is a tough game for Galway away, and Waterford have been, I suppose, steadily. They got off to a really poor start. I actually expected them to be real title contenders. I know they're third now, but they're 9 points behind. But yeah, to go down to Waterford is not going to be an easy task for Galway. But to rub salt in the wounds is obviously losing to Waterford United 2-1. And then for Cork to get beaten at home, Cork are not going to get beaten at home much between now and the end of the season. And when they do, as the chasing team, you've really got to capitalise on it. So it's definitely an opportunity lost for Galway. And like we say, Cork will play this evening, so they've that game in hand. So we'll see how that goes. And you'd expect them to bounce back after a disappointing defeat for Treaty at home, because Cork have had terrific support down there all season long. And I know Galway beat them 1-0 earlier in the season down there, but you don't expect them to lose too many games between now and the end of the season at home.
Yeah, and in the Women's National League, Cork City lost 2-1 at home to Athlone, who are continuing to have a really, really good season up to third. And DLR Waves drew 1-1 with Peamount United, and Anya Gorman with the late equaliser there with a header. And then Shelbourne, who are at the top of the table and have had a little bit of a wobble domestically, beat Treaty United 4-0. And then Sligo Rovers lost 2-0 at home to Bohs. And then Galway United losing 1-0 at home to Wexford with Even Clancy's late penalty, keeping Wexford in the title race. And I suppose from the title battle at the top, Anthony, I mean, as I said, Shelbourne have had a little bit of a wobble, but again, this is a crucial result for them, especially when they're going to be playing in the Champions League now very, very shortly against Slovenian opposition.
Yeah, it is, just to keep Wexford youths at arm's length. And obviously Heather O'Reilly coming in was a real shot in the arm for everybody, for the whole league actually, to come in to have a player that sort of status to come into the side at this part of the season. I think it's going to go to the wire again, as it did last year. Wexford Youths got a really big win at the weekend, right at the end. They got a winner there at Galway. But the story of the season so far is Athlone, Raf. Like they're having a great season, and that's the fruits of some really good work, some positive work that they've done behind the scenes. They put a lot into young players, into their underage team. They've got players. They have had players in the last few years with the Ireland underage teams. They've just had 3 players called up into Vera Pauw's Ireland team to train with them over the next month. Jessica Hennessy, Emily Corbett, and Muireann Devaney are going to go in and have a taste of the senior camp there, which is great. And they're not actually out of it yet. They're thereabouts. I don't think they might just fade that little lack of experience towards the tail end of the season. But they've been brilliant this year, and it's great to see a new team like that sort of come and kick on and keep progressing. Sligo have done well. New team again, first season in the division. Bowls are only there a couple of years, so it's good to see that. It's good to see good young players, especially knocking on the door for the Ireland team. And I would expect that, as I said, I think this title race is going to go to the wire again, because Shelbourne have a lot of quality, but Wexford have a lot of quality themselves and experience as well. And they really, they won the FAI Cup last year. They want the league. That's what they all said after that cup win. They want to mount another real proper title challenge. So yeah, we've got an interesting couple of months coming up.
Yeah, now we're going to turn our attentions to what's happening in England with some of the Irish players, and then also Manchester United, and then Chelsea, Spurs as well. But before we get to that, obviously, we have a few players playing in Italy, and Festi Ebosele made his Udinese debut as a late substitute against the Serie A champions AC Milan. Udinese lost 4-2, but Ebosele played the last 7 minutes, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. And then Aaron Connolly down in Serie B as well played for Venezia for the last couple of minutes against Genoa yesterday. Again, there's been a lot, I think we talked about him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago after he made the move, and some of his comments that obviously he kind of feels like the penny has dropped, and we'll follow closely and see how he gets on over there, because his aim is obviously try and fight back into the Ireland squad. But over in the Championship, Chidozie Ogbene, he's been in really good scoring form, 3 goals this season, including one in the Carabao Cup against Port Vale, and he scored at the weekend there against Reading. And I think, Keith, from Ogbene's point of view, because when he was playing in League One for Rotherham last season, it seemed he was often playing wing back, whereas with Ireland he was playing as part of that fluid front three that Kenny had put in. And looking at the formations and how they've lined up, the Rotherham manager has moved him up front, and that bodes well from an Irish point of view.
Well, yeah, looking at it with Irish eyes, I think we want Ogbene playing as far up the pitch as possible. I've seen him play an awful lot live in the Aviva, and it's just different to what you get now from your modern day wingers. When you take your likes of Mane and Salah, maybe even Riyad Mahrez out of it, so much of football to these days is it gets into the wide area, it comes back to the centre halves and gets recycled back out, and you keep shifting them around until you find the gaps in between the spaces. But when you give the ball to Ogbene, he's so raw and so direct that he'll just knock it past you and run. And that's the one thing that the left back and the right back, they hate doing that. They hate getting into foot races with people. And when Ogbene knocks that ball past you, he's so strong as well that even if you are quicker than him, it's going to be strong. It's going to be a hard battle to keep him behind you. So for me, the further he plays up the pitch, the better for us. He scored a few goals in the Championship already, as you said. And I'm a big fan of his. I think he could probably take the next step. I'm not saying he could probably jump into the Premiership. I do think that will come in his career at some point. I feel he can, no disrespect to Rotherham, but I feel he could take the next step outside Rotherham and maybe branch out a little bit, because he is a little bit raw, maybe technically a little bit wanting, but the tools and the talent are there that can be worked with.
Yeah, and it comes at a time, obviously, Georgie Kelly, just from an Irish point of view as well, also came on as a sub against Reading. He only started to get a bit of game time towards the end of last season, having moved from Bowes mid-season, so we'll see how he gets on as well. And then Obafemi yet to score for Swansea, but he did assist their winner at Blackpool late on at the weekend. Gary, the other one that we've been keeping an eye on, of course, is Troy Parrott as well, for Preston, and he did score. He got off the mark for them against Huddersfield in the Carabao Cup in midweek, but Preston themselves not being particularly high scoring. I mean, I think they've 1 goal from 3, haven't conceded yet, but obviously from our point of view, we do want to see him scoring, because as we've talked about with Ogbene there's Obafemi, there's a nice mix of forwards there for Stephen Kenny to pick from. So with games coming up towards the end of September in the Nations League, the importance is now to see some of them scoring as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, Preston and Rotherham tomorrow night in Preston will be a really interesting one. Where you have a couple of the players that have been mentioned so far that'll be on view, and I'm sure that'll be a game that Stephen Kenny will probably take in. Like, it's great to have so many options, and I'm a big fan of Ogbene as well. Like, he is so, I suppose, frightening for, especially like in the wide areas. You just know when this kid's going to get, he is going to take you on. And I'd say 9 times out of 10 he's going to be faster than the guy he's up against. So he's a real handful, and it's very exciting to see his progress. Obviously from Cork City to Limerick to he went to Brentford, and now obviously really flourishing under Warren at Rotherham. So but like there's loads of players like Will Keane at Wigan. There's lots of players playing the championship. Like a lot of our players that are getting regular game time are playing the championship. Obviously Robbie Brady's back, and he set up the goal the weekend. He put in an assist for Preston's goal. So the championship is a really good standard of football. I think it'd be probably rated as the fourth or fifth best league in Europe. So it's great to see so many of our young players coming through. I think it's exciting times for the national team, with all the players that are getting an opportunity and that are playing a really good standard of football as well.
Yeah, and Keith, I don't know how much you've seen of Dara Costelloe at Burnley. Obviously, he's somebody who was on the bench when towards the end of the Premier League season last season when they got relegated. But Vincent Kompany has come in and he's pretty much put him straight into the first team, playing out wide on the right. He's somebody who started his career here with Galway United. But what have you made of him?
I seen him play the opening game of the season against Huddersfield. He was really good. I enjoyed him. A little bit raw, maybe defensively a little bit naive at times, but he's playing with a manager now that knows the ins and outs. He's been a player. He knows, like you said about these young forward thinking managers, he's going to be taught where he needs to be. It's almost turning into a game of chess now, football. There's so many tactics involved in it, but as long as he's willing to learn and he keeps the enthusiasm he is, I think it'd be good, because he looks like he's going to stay in the Burnley team. I think the performances he's put in over the last 2 weeks or so have been decent enough. I don't see any reason to change him. So, barring injuries, I think we could probably see him in the Irish squad soon enough.
Yeah, and in the Premier League, Liverpool playing Crystal Palace tonight, but Manchester United are probably one of the stories of the weekend, losing 4-0 at Brentford. But Anthony, at what point do Liverpool supporters start feeling a bit sorry for United, or is that a sort of impossibility?
No, that's an impossibility. The funny thing is that they play, I think, next week. They play next Monday night, and I would not rule out Man United getting a result next Monday night. Now, they still have very good individuals and talented individuals, and I actually think Ten Hag is giving off some good vibes. He's got a really difficult job, and that game on Saturday was an absolute shambles. It's almost like they went onto the pitch with all this information, this technical information, and this is what we do, and we have kickouts, and that they just forgot that, to play a game of football, you actually have to scrap, like especially in the Premier League. If you don't go out with aggression and pace, you're going to get beaten by every other team in the division. Like that's your baseline quality. Liverpool played Fulham and were pedestrian and poor, but they got a point. They got out with a point because they're well ahead of Man United at this point. They do have a system and a structure and certain standards that they don't tend to dip below. Whereas United at the minute, they do look like they could get hammered by anyone. And look, they could get hammered by Liverpool next week, but there's something about them, and there's something about Ten Hag that I actually think they will get a reaction next week. Just long term, they don't look like they can sustain any sort of consistency. And they're 3, 4, 5 good players short of starting to just get back to being like a solid top 5 or 6 team. Forget about anything else. Fair play to Brentford. I thought they were very good, but all they did was just expose these crazy weaknesses and gaps and that United had. And I'm talking 5'9" centre half in the Premier League. He is a good player, Martinez, but what's going to happen? Any team you play, what are they going to do? Long throw-ins, target him at set pieces. He ends up getting taken off at half time. So, yeah, it's a bit of a circus at the minute, Raf. So But yeah, not much sympathy from the Liverpool corner, I wouldn't have said.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes back to something you hear in boxing. Like, it's all good having a plan until you get punched in the face. And then when you look at Eric Ten Hag's comments afterwards, you can have a good plan, but then you put the plan in the bin. I think it's nothing to do with tactics. The first two goals are about dealing with the ball and decisions. I think they follow my instructions, but they make bad decisions. This is football. It's a game of mistakes, and we got punished. And Keith, when you look at the at that first half, obviously all four goals were scored there. So there's mistakes at set pieces, and then there's getting pressed, like Eriksson getting pressed by Jensen at the edge of his own box, and De Gea, of course, making a mistake, which he took responsibility for because he felt it obviously led to what came afterwards, and then they got done on the break. So you're looking at a team that were getting done in pretty much every facet of the game imaginable.
Yeah, they weren't just outplayed by Brentford. They were outfought, and it just reeks of naivety to me when you're going away to Brentford. And me being an Arsenal fan, when I throw my mind back to the opening game of last season when Arsenal played Brentford in the Brentford Stadium, and Brentford just bullied the two centre-halves. Arsenal actually played Ben White, who came in from Brighton for 50 million, and he just got bullied, and Brentford won the game 3-0. And then Ten Hag comes, and it's like he had no knowledge of this. He had no knowledge that Brentford might go a little bit more direct and be a little bit physical. They ended up having to take the 5'9" centre half off. But the disappointing thing for me was when you see the Ben Mee header, he's with him and he just never gets off the ground. It's like he's expecting a battle. Ben Mee actually heads the ball at about hip height. He's falling away and heads it in, and he just doesn't. There's nothing there. And Eriksson makes a very bad decision. He comes for the ball. I don't think the ball should be given from De Gea, but the ball is given, so Eriksson should deal with it. He's made himself available, so he should deal with it. He gets caught, and then the De Gea mistake as well. It's not a Manchester United team that I'm used to seeing. They get caught playing out in the back. They don't look comfortable on the ball. You've Harry Maguire standing on the halfway line. If you're Ivan Toney or Mbeumo, all you want to do is get into a foot race with him, and you want to bully the other centre half. So I think there's a lot of question marks over a few of these United players. I think I've been saying it till I'm blue in the face. McTominay and Fred are not good enough to play together. It's one of them, and you need somebody in beside them who will complement them. But the two of them together, at times, Fred's 100%. He will give you 100%, but his 100% is not good enough for Manchester United. McTominay's a young lad. He's doing his best. He's learning on the job, but at the minute, he's not good enough. How many of these United players would get into the other top five? Your Chelsea's, Liverpool, Man City's, Arsenal's. I don't think Arsenal would even take half of these Manchester United players. They don't have any fight, any desire, any will. And even more, like we're hearing about the Ten Hag with his 5 rules he's brought into the club. These are all commonsensical things. And I played under managers that are disciplinarians, and they've never had rules like this because it's common sense. And if he feels he needs to come in and put these in black and white and saying this is it, no alcohol, no personal chefs. If you're late for a team meeting, you're dropped. That's it. No, that's no ifs, buts, and maybes. It's like they're treating them like kids. And I can imagine if I was a player in there, and you can imagine the egos that Manchester United players would have, for somebody to come in and treat you like a kid, I'm sure it's not going down well. Now, listen, I think United have problems at the top. They've got problems on the pitch, and they've got problems off the pitch. That club needs to be gutted from top to bottom. The playing staff needs to go, but the bulk of the playing staff need to go. The people at the top, the Glazers, need to go. There's Ronaldo issues, the De Jong transfer, and then you're hearing that they're thinking Arnautovic might be able to help them out. They've got a 37-year-old striker who's probably probably the top 5 players to ever kick a football, and you're bringing in Arnautovic. I just don't understand. It seems like Ten Hag wants something, but the board wants another thing. To me, it's a football club that is not on the same level. I think there's mixed messages coming out all over the place, and I'm an Arsenal fan. I have a tiny bit of sympathy for them right now.
And the other game, of course, on Sunday, and it got quite tempestuous at the very end with a bizarre handshake, and then which turned into a brawl. Gary, was Chelsea 2, Tottenham 2. So Chelsea were very impressive largely, and there's been question marks about them as the season came in, because obviously there have been changes. They've let Lukaku go. Obviously he didn't have a great season last season, but Raheem Sterling coming in, there was question marks about where the goals are going to come from, but they pressed well. But at the same time, then Tottenham, again, sometimes they're a club maybe that aren't linked in with the idea of resilience, but they showed resilience to get a point away in a very, very tough game.
Yeah, look, a very entertaining game, 2-2. Look, the game had lots in it. Obviously, look, the incident at the end, but I suppose Harry Kane turning up with a 96-minute equaliser really is, probably not synonymous with Spurs. They would have always been seen as kind of a soft team, but Conte is anything but soft, and he's obviously put his demands in place earlier on in the year, and he's dipped into the transfer market, and he's certainly in full control there, and they'll be very happy, to go away to a really good Chelsea side, and to come out of it with a point, given the circumstance. Obviously, when you're a 2-2 draw, when you're 2-1 down in the 96th minute, that feels like a win, and Spurs will take a lot from that. Obviously, Chelsea won't lose much in drawing the game, but all in all, it was a terrifically entertaining game on the Sunday, obviously, and but Kane is just phenomenal, and the players that Spurs have. Like, I'm really interested to see how Spurs go this year. They've added that bit of extra quality that Kane and Son last year were excellent, and the players that they've added to that now, it'll be interesting viewing for the remainder of the season. See, can they push on and put a challenge in there. But look, when you look at at Man City and Liverpool, Man City look awesome as well. And you look at the points total that both City and Liverpool have racked up in recent seasons. It's going to be tough to break into that top two, but Spurs certainly going in the right direction.
Yeah, and helped obviously by finishing the season strongly last season, pipping Arsenal to the top four. Keith, you mentioned Arsenal a couple of times there, but in terms of they've won 2 from 2, a tough challenge on the opening day at Palace, because that Patrick Vieira Palace team is pretty handy. And then to follow it up, despite a couple of little defensive mistakes, Gabriel Jesus looks like he's added another dimension to their attack. So 4-2 win at Leicester.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how things are going at Arsenal. I think top 4, might be just out of our reach. I think City, Liverpool is set in stone, whichever way that, first and second, I'm not sure, but we think we'd all agree Liverpool and City will be top of the 3. Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal, I'm not sure. I think Arsenal will finish above United, hopefully. But I think Arsenal are moving in the right direction. I think when you have the youth in the team like Arsenal have, like a Smith Rowe, Martinelli, Odegaard, the likes of these players, the young players, they're good young players, but with youth comes inconsistency. So I do think there's times when 2 or 3 of them don't turn up, or you have a little hamstring niggle here or there. So I do think there is a lull to come just because there's youth in the team. But with Jesus and Zinchenko in particular, I really like the signing of Zinchenko because he can play left back, which I'm happy with Kieran Tierney there when he's fit, but he's he's always injured. But when he is fit and fully fit and firing, I put him in at left back and I'd move Zinchenko into the deep line midfielder, because I think if I'm hearing a couple of rumours about Arsenal maybe getting Tielemans out of Leicester. If they were to get him out of Leicester, I think Arsenal are really then starting to build a decent squad. I think the new centre half Saliba, he was on loan at Lille last season. He looks to be decent. Now, whether or not he can deal with the physicality of the Premiership will remains to be seen. But when you look at Arsenal now, I think we're in a decent position. Mikel Arteta, a young team. We don't seem to have too many big egos. I think the one ego we had was Aubameyang, and Arteta dealt with that pretty swiftly. And I think the rest of the players have fell into line after that. So I'm happy with Arsenal. If we get top 6, I'll be over the moon. I think we're in the right place, and especially when you look across at Manchester United, what's happening there, I think it's puts things into perspective, and not to overreach and think we should be challenging for top 2, 3. I think realistically we're in a good place. We're moving forward. We've young players that will get better under Arteta and will keep to get better. We'll keep on getting better. So yeah, look, at top 6 for me this season is hopefully what we'll get in next season. If we can add another 1 or 2, maybe get Tielemans out of Leicester, Arsenal will be in a really good place.
Yeah, and then Aubameyang, it looks like he's potentially going to Chelsea, because obviously Barcelona have to try to balance the books, but good luck with that if your debt's $1 billion and a bit. But I suppose finally, Anthony, before we go, also a word on Mark Travers. We talked about Gavin Bazunu last week, who wasn't at fault for any of the goals that Spurs scored against Southampton last week, largely again for Bournemouth having just come up and him being number 1, playing against Manchester City. They're always going to be on a hiding to nothing. They lost 4-0, but again, like Bazunu last week, you couldn't really fault Travers for any of the goals at the weekend.
No, I mean, look, he was kind of the forgotten man in the whole debate around Kelleher and Bazunu. Like all the while we were talking about the two lads and who's going to win that fight for the number one jersey with Ireland long term. And Travers was playing consistently in a top championship team, and now he's a Premier League keeper and he has the jersey. And you're looking at it now, in terms of a 2-horse race, and maybe it's Travers and Bazunu. Even Kelleher, he really needs to consider what his next move is now, because the longer he stays at Liverpool, the further he's going to sit behind the two lads. They're out playing now. They've dropped down to Championship or League One or League Two in Bazunu's case, and played, developed by playing week after week, and now they're playing in the Premier League. So we're really lucky, from as an Irish fan's point of view. It's great. We're spoiled for choice. We've got these three great keepers, but it just shows you the benefit of just playing, just getting out and playing. I think Gary referenced it in terms of the League of Ireland as well earlier on, with Anang, playing in a league every week, a competitive, tough league, and nothing hastens your development like it, the lessons that you learn playing in front of crowds, tough physical games and all the rest. So yeah, he's a very good goalkeeper. He was unfortunate in the game he played Serbia away, wasn't it, where he was caught with a lob that night, and he looked quite nervous that night, but that's not going to define his career, Mark Travers. He's too good. He's very talented. And often Stephen Kenny has made a point in press conferences when you ask him about Kelleher or Bazunu, he will always mention, or very regularly mention, Mark Travers, because he impresses so much in training. They think a lot of this guy. And, if he keeps doing well, he's got a real chance now in Bournemouth. He's got a couple of years experience, maturity under his belt to nail down that number one spot.
Yeah.
Himself right back in the Ireland conversation.
Yeah, and one last thing to watch as well for any GA fans, of course, as well. Jamie Clark having signed for Newry City, I think it was on Friday, so he might be making his debut against Linfield this Sunday coming. So that's one to look out for, especially if you're an Armagh supporter. If he's any way as good as he is on a Gaelic football pitch, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on with Newry. But anyway, that brings us to a close. So as I said, the Shamrock Rovers first leg in Hungary against Ferencvaros is going to be live on RT2 and the RT Player on Thursday. So there's that to look forward to. But Keith and Gary, thanks a million for coming on this week, and Anthony as well. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks,